that it's only people who live in St. Lucia continue to run St. Lucia.
Yes. Again, it shows his naivety, his lack of being informed, and maybe because of his own arrogance that he found himself making that statement. Because even that would be a wrong statement.
I'm a product of Canada. I did my high school in Canada. I did my university in Canada. Both my kids go to school in Canada.
I could have lived in Canada too, you know. But I chose Grenada.
And, politicians get invited to speak as guest speakers in other political parties' conventions. I'm sure you were invited to speak at a political parties' convention in other countries. Let us talk about, before getting into the meat of the matter of this conversation, let us talk about principles of non-interference that you've adhered to. Like, you know, let's say your colleague, Dr. Mitchell in Grenada invited you to speak at the NNP convention, or your colleague in Jamaica invited you to speak at the JLP convention. What do you have at the back of your mind when you're thinking about what to say at a political convention? Because what tends to happen, sir, is that there is the impression that a guest speaker's presence at a political party's convention is an implicit endorsement of that particular political party. So can you understand why people might perceive that in general as being a problem, especially for sitting prime ministers in the region?
So I'm glad you made that distinction.
Yes.
So in the region, we have political brothers and sisters aligned by ideology. So there are really two such movements in the Caribbean. One is called the Caribbean Democratic Union, which tends to be the conservatives. Now, the word conservative in the Caribbean is not the samely defined or the same meaning as other conservative parties around the world, although we're aligned to those entities through what's called the International Democratic Union. And then you have the socialist movement. So you will find that party supporters, whether they be political leaders, members of the party, going to each other's conventions. So the distinction that you've made, which is a very important distinction, which changes things, is when you're a sitting prime minister and you go over to your sister party's convention, then that requires a lot more constraint. For instance, I just recently, as the leader of the opposition of St. Lucia, attended the leader of the opposition's convention in Belize. And similarly, he, if you remember, attended my meeting. And really the purpose of those things are to speak about each other's ideologies, policies, and to offer advice to the base of the party. So particularly if we had just recently lost, what are the lessons that we've learned and how they can apply them in building their own party and hopefully getting into government themselves.
Absolutely. So it's important, I think, the nuance here must be established that, but most of you are normally invited to speak in your capacity as political leader and not as prime minister, yes?
Correct. But there's no way of separating the two when you are the prime minister.
This is the point. This is the point that needs to be made. Now, Mr. Chastanet, given our Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell's comments and utterances, and the comments and utterances of other people within the St. Lucia Labour Party at their conference in respect of your allegiances to St. Lucia, I did play that clip here. So where you were talking about, of course, because I was trying to find the full clip to provide better context, but unfortunately the news site did not provide the full clip. But can you contextualize that conversation you were having in which you said you're a product of Canada and you spoke about your children being in Canada and so on and so forth?
Sure. This was during the COVID period, and we were trying to advocate within Canada to put pressure on the Canadian Prime Minister to assist us in getting vaccines. It was, honestly, a horror show to be Prime Minister during that time. in which we felt like the world had turned their back on us. We could not get ventilators. We couldn't get PPP items. And I became very good friends, in fact, with Governor Cuomo during that period, because even the state of New York was being outbidded on many occasions in trying to get equipment. So we had written to Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister in Canada. We had written to Justin Trudeau in Canada. Sorry, Boris Johnson in the UK, Trudeau in Canada. We'd written to President Trump. We'd written to world leaders. In fact, the only world leader that came to the assistance of the Caribbean was Modi in India. So I was on a radio show, a TV show in Canada, and trying to use the fact that I had gone to high school and had gone to university in Canada. And it just so happened at the time that both my kids, my son is attending the same high school that I attended, and my daughter was just graduating from high school in Canada. So the issue that is being brought up, maybe if I can just preempt you a little bit, has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I went to school in Canada. So that was the first mistake that your Prime Minister made in his faux pas. The issue at hand has more to do with the fact that I was born in Martinique as to whether I qualify to be a Prime Minister of St. Lucia.
Well, except I would push back there. The Prime Minister of Grenada never said whether or not your birthright was in question. He said whether or not people who live in St. Lucia.
So again, and again, it shows his naivety, his lack of being informed, and maybe because of his own arrogance, that he found himself making that statement. Because even that would be a wrong statement. How could a person who has spent the last 18 years in elected politics in St. Lucia not live in St. Lucia? How? So the only thing that I have done abroad, which I think that there are many people who've gone abroad for education. You know, most of us used to go to England until England stopped giving us access to fees that were equivalent of being a Commonwealth member. And a lot of persons end up going to Canada, and so did I. I mean, I went to school in St. Lucia. My whole life has been in St. Lucia. My family's life has been in St. Lucia. My wife's, both my family and my wife's family have been here for 4 generations. So where would that comment come in? Who doesn't live in St. Lucia? So here it is, everybody knew who he was speaking of, yet the way that he was describing that person, it made absolutely no sense. Only made sense to the party hacks who thought that it was supporting their argument that because I was not born in St. Lucia, that I should not be contesting the elections. It's fraught with problems. So this government is playing on the emotions of people rather than trying to build a proper democracy. And sadly, our civil society and a lot of persons you would expect that would come into the fray to be the protectors of our democracy, they're not, and that silence is hurting us, and a large part is because people have fear. But I'm so proud of the public of St. Lucia, who have voiced their opinions so strongly that our Prime Minister threw your Prime Minister under the bus, because he came out 24 hours afterwards to say there's never been any discussion in his party as to going in this direction. And he doesn't know where that came from. So what it means is your Prime Minister took it upon himself to come to the country and attack a sitting leader of the opposition. For what reason? For what reason? So we all know that this is just hogwash. It's a very sad reality of our politics.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.